Yo, what's going on, guys? And today, I think this is how I'm gonna start doing things. We're gonna have a bunch of news. I have like 13 to 15 things we're gonna talk about. Hit that like and subscribe button. And I don't know what we're gonna call this Zero Show. I have no idea. But the way we do this is we're gonna just run through this. You guys can comment, stream what or comment on the stream and stuff, and or watch the full stream. But I'm gonna go through all my topics, clip this, and then release those as individual videos. Maybe I start uploading this on streaming platforms, but let's just get right into it. And like, subscribe, it means the world. Just by doing it this format, it allows me to I have a lot going on in my life. I'm working full time covering the NBA and doing other things for USA Today's Hoops Hype. I'm doing my PhD. I have work. I bought a condo. I have to do work around it. I go to the gym and play basketball 2 hours. I have 24. I have a lot of things going on. And I have a girlfriend who I'm doing long distance with of 5 years that I'm getting married to, that I plan on getting married to. So a lot of things that I have to do. So doing it this format allows me to clip it and do all that good stuff. So let's get into the first topic that I'd like to talk about today. And that is going to be Mr. Yes, big man by the name of Isaiah Hartenstein. And the way I'm just trying to see how I want to do this. All right. So the way I see this is I'm going to be able to present images or I'm not going to be able to present images. So give me 5 seconds to figure out, is it only video files you're going to allow me? Yeah, that's weird. I'm trying to present a image and it's like, yeah, you can only do slides. And I'm sitting here like, all right, why would I want to only do slides? Weird. So we're just going to present this, which isn't the end of the world. I don't think so. But it allows me just to go on this view. And the way I think we're going to have to just do this, I have no idea how we're going to show it this way. And I'm going to have to think of an impromptu way of showing this. Because the way I thought this was going to go in my head was actually, you know what's the easiest way to do this? You ready? Boom. And then that's not what I wanted, but give me 5 seconds and I'm back. Now, sorry for everybody who came into this and was like, oh, I'm going to watch this and this is not going to be a shit show. Booyah, not a shit show anymore because I'm quick on my feet. Let's get right into it. Orlando Magic interested in Isaiah Hartenstein. You're thinking, why would they be interested in Isaiah Hartenstein? Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I don't like how closely my microphone or like this screen is looking at me, but either way, we'll fix that in a second. Isaiah Hartenstein is the perfect for. We're hearing that the Oklahoma City Thunder want to give him about $45 million, $50 million. He's looking to get $20 to $25 million this coming season. Crazy to think that when this guy was in high school, at one point he was projected to be a top 5 pick. Then he went overseas. This past season, 25 minutes a night, 8 points, 8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, a steal a night, a block a game while shooting 65% from the field. And, you know, the very, very, very once in a blue moon three. The German himself from Eugene, Oregon, is a big man that I like, sets solid screens. Basically, if you aren't that 3-and-D or a unicorn or the Alperen Şengün, Domantas Sabonis, Nikola Jokic mold, you are the Isaiah Hartenstein mold, which is the tough defensive, solid brick wall setting, big man who rim runs, does all the dirty work, strong rebounder, can do a little bit passing, might not be the fastest guy on the floor, but is a very, very, very suitable big man when it comes to helping your team win games. So Orlando is a team that this past season, you're first off, we're assuming that I'm under the assumption that the New York Knicks are not going to re-sign him because he was going to be too expensive for them, and it is going to be economically more better for them to draft a guy with one of their 2 picks if they keep both of them, or if they just keep one of them, to go get an Yves Messi, a Khalil Ware, one of the bigs that will be available in the back end of the draft, or even go out and get a free agent on a minimum contract. My favorite mention always Mason Plumlee, Daniel Tice, or Andre Drummond, guys to mention that will be cheaper than keeping Mr. Isaiah Hartenstein on this roster. However, Isaiah Hartenstein is a player that Orlando is a fan of. And the reason for Orlando being a fan of Isaiah Hartenstein, to me, it makes sense. You're getting yourself a guy who is big and who can do a little bit of everything. But what did Orlando do last year? Well, last year Orlando played a guy by the name of Goga Bitsadeh, who's going to walk in free agency, and Orlando needs to spend a little bit of money, and they can get this guy Isaiah Hartenstein on a 1 to 2 year deal just to spend the salary cap floor. But a guy like Goga, for the Wendell Carter missed some games, and I think they want to move on from Wendell, and they'll get a lot of value from him this offseason because of how his contract's set up. So for me, when you look at a guy like Mr. Goga, who played 15 minutes a night and put up decent stats of just about, I think, what was it, like 5 rebounds a night, 4.5 with 5 points, solid on 60%. Isaiah Hartenstein can come in and fill those minutes well. Plus, it would allow them to move on from Mo Wagner if they wanted to as well, even though I think Mo's been great. Now, this report about Mr. Isaiah Hartenstein's potentially becoming not available, but being of interest is coming from my co-worker, Mr. Michael Scotto, at Hoops Hype, in his latest mock draft, that yes, Isaiah Hartenstein is a guy that the Orlando Magic could have interest in. Now, when we look at the Orlando Magic salary cap wise, what are they looking at? And we know that they are a team that is going to go after Klay Thompson, Paul George. I think they should kind of look at their salary cap situation. I think either you go big or you go ahead and you try to get a guy like Buddy Hield and then spend a little bit of money on Isaiah Hartenstein, and you don't overspend and give any long-term deals. You just do short-term deals, overpay for 1-year deals so you don't compromise yourself financially, is what I personally would do, because I don't like compromising myself financially, and we still have to pay Mr. Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner down the road. And Orlando had the least amount of salary. Now, Orlando going into next year has $85 million. I think they have to spend about $60 million. We assume their pick, which is about like $10 million. So about $50 million has to be spent to get to the salary cap floor to hit the luxury tax. I think they would have to spend $70 million. They're not going to get there. So by wasting some of that money on Isaiah, not wasting, but spending some of that money on Isaiah Hartenstein on a 2-year deal would mean that by the time Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and everybody else deals kick in, Isaiah Hartenstein would be off the books. So it's really not a deal that would hurt them entirely. So I think that is one that if you're looking at, okay, what could be something that could incentivize them to do a deal of that magnitude, it would be for Isaiah Hartenstein. And if they miss out on Paul George and Klay Thompson, and they're like, okay, let's go ahead and get guys like Buddy Hield, Isaiah Hartenstein. Maybe we bring in a point guard like Tyus Jones, and right there we spent $20 million on Isaiah Hartenstein. We spent 10 on Buddy Hield, and we spent 15 on Tyus Jones. Right there, we brought in a point guard, a swing man, and a big for all of the cost of $45 million, and we've signed them the 2-year deals, maybe with a third year being a team option, and have the money set up that you have partial guarantees or non-guarantees, so you're able to move off of those contracts rather quickly than worry about, oh, crap, now we have to pay our young guys this way. Okay, we're forced to get to the salary cap floor, which is $141 million. They're currently at 85 guaranteed salaries. So by spending $45 million, you just put yourself at $130 million. Now put in 10 right there for the rookie you'll sign, maybe an undrafted free agent. So you're there you got yourself to the salary cap floor, and you still have $30 million before you even get close to the luxury tax. And I think is really smart, because you still have 2 years before you have to really think about Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner's contracts coming into effect. And if you get a guy like Tyus Jones in this situation, if you were to get Isaiah Hartenstein, you put yourself in the position to move off of Cole Anthony and to allow Jalen Suggs, Anthony Black, and in this example, Tyus Jones to be the good guy. So I really think that's a move that they would benefit from, in my opinion. Now, what do you guys think about that? I think, again, this is all circumstantial. I think the biggest thing when you look at how the NBA is going to be structured, especially this offseason, and I don't know why my ear is itching me like crazy, but the way that the NBA is going to be structured this offseason is how are teams going to set themselves up long-term financially with contracts, so they don't put themselves into juxtapositions that they have to decide who they want to pay and why they, or make those tough decisions, which are deciding who to pay. Now, I didn't mean to sit here and talk about the Orlando Magic for like 5 minutes, but it sent us down a rabbit hole that I think was definitely worth getting into, because it comes back down. It really came back down to understanding salary and why teams sometimes spend money on people that you would be surprised that they would spend money on. And it's nothing. I'm not sitting here and being like, oh, this is somebody that they spent money on and it was a bad decision, because I don't necessarily think that's the right way to look at it. Now, for me, I think it's more, hey, let's just try to improve a situation for that we're in. But either way, I think this is how I want to do it. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but update right here. This looks way better. Alrighty, so we're going to talk now Royce O'Neal, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just zoom this in. Royce O'Neal is expected, shout out my coworker, Mr. Michael Scott at Hoops Hype. If you guys haven't checked out our content at Hoops Hype, we just released our final mock draft and my scouting guide. I did all 75 scouting reports on the top 75 players. I went to Portsmouth this year, second year at the scouting combine, so go check that stuff out. Royce O'Neal, a guy that I've always liked. Some people are going to be like, oh, he's undersized, oh, this and that. I think he's the perfect modern kind of Swiss Army knife that teams don't realize they need. And he was tucked away in Utah for years. And if you really were watching Utah basketball during that run, you knew about Royce O'Neal, and people are going to look at his stats and be like, ew. But he actually is true shooting wise. I think like a 55, 58. He primarily takes threes, doesn't really do any. If he does shoot anything besides a 3-pointer, it's a layup, and he doesn't really shoot inside the arc. He's going to be a guy who gives you a few rebounds, can be a secondary playmaker. He's going to be able to defend arguably 1 through 4. And this past year for the Phoenix Suns, he put up 8 points a night on 41%, 37% from the 3, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal a night. And on the season, he put up, I believe, what was it? About a combination of like about 4%, 37%, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Basically the same stats on both teams because he played for the Nets to start the year. And he's going to get $10 million a year. People are like, but he's 31. Probably going to be a 3-year, $33 million deal. And I know for a fact that the Phoenix Suns are a team that would like to keep him, as he's a fantastic player. Also, we just heard that Ethan Almansa is withdrawing from the NBA draft. We're going to have to talk about that in a second. That is crazy. But that's going to be topic for something in a little bit, because we have other things we want to talk. But Bartelstein is his agent, who is also his son is the team governor for the Phoenix Suns. So don't be surprised if he remains in Phoenix. He's projected to re-sign with the Phoenix Suns on roughly $10 million a year. They have his bird rights, so they're able to go over the cap to retain him, and they need to retain him, as the Suns last year with him in the rotation, he was a guy that really played a solid amount of minutes for them. And I think he was one that, if I had to say so myself, he was a big part of what they did out there. And I thought when you look at Phoenix, he's a guy that was the only reliable player off their bench. As they started, I want to say Nurkic, Durant, Allen, Booker, and Beal when healthy. Does Eric Gordon come back? Maybe, but like Royce O'Neal at this point was a more consistent sixth man. He gives you a little bit of playmaking, 3-point shooting. He can come out for Allen. He can come out for Booker. He can come out for Beal. As we all know, I think this team still needs a legitimate backup point guard, but that's going to be something for another day. Now, I think one of the bigger storylines is Royce O'Neal is not going to be a scorer. He's not going to be a guy who's going to blow the doors open, in the sense that he's not a scoring six man. He's more in the lines of like a Joe Ingles six man. So how do you take advantage of that type of guy and building around him and off the bench? Because you have to build a bench around him. I think you need to get shot creators. keeping Eric Gordon would be huge. Now, outside of that, Eric Gordon, you have, I guess you want to say outside of Eric Gordon, you would have Royce O'Neal staying. Does Josh? I just don't care for Josh Okogie to say they're saying Bull's there. Sure, let's get a backup big. They want another big. We've talked about it always. Daniel Tice, Andre Drummond, Mason Plumlee. Sure, go ahead there. Bull's your forward. Royce O'Neal plays the other wing spots. Eric Gordon's your combo guard. Now you need like a true point guard, either off the bench or somebody. And when you look at free agency, it's not the prettiest of sights in who's available for 2024. I think Tyus Jones is expected to return to the Wizards. They're just going to be able to pay him more than what anybody else is going to be able to pay him. There's nothing wrong with that. I am personally surprised with not, I was about to say Ethan, but personally surprised with how this free agent market. Chris Dunn could be a guy that they go, but he doesn't. I want a scoring guy if I'm looking for a point guard to complement Royce O'Neal. I like Eric Gordon. In theory, I like Bull if Mr. Mike Budenholzer is going to use him. They need a backup big. We talked about that already. We already know those options. And I don't think maybe Spencer Dinwiddie, he had an extremely inefficient season as a scorer, but I think he's never been a super efficient guy, but he's a good, solid-sized guard who can shoot over, guys. He's a guy that his three-point shot was freaking terrible. I mean, outside of that, he's really your best option unless you believe in Aaron Holiday or Markelle Fultz. I don't, and I don't think you guys should either. Now, besides that, yeah, I think we're kind of put in a pinch. I want to hear your guys' opinions on that one. What would you guys want to do? Because Emmanuel Quickley, Contavious Caldwell-Pope, Bruce Brown, Malik Beasley, Gary Trent, DeAnthony Milton. I mean, and Isaiah Joe, again, like we need a point guard. So I think that becomes a huge thing. So that's – hey, see ya, Killer Nation. We'll talk Utah Jazz shortly. And I think that is probably the biggest problem right here. Now, let's go ahead and switch it. So before we get into this, Mr. 81, I'm recording this is a live stream, but I'm just like clipping and stuff like that. Either way, you know what? The Spurs to do what? Oh, you're not talking Killer Nation, Timothy Newen. All right, guys, let's get into this Ethan Almansa news. This one shocked me. So Ethan, you guys know I've interviewed Ethan. Really good kid. I did not expect Ethan Almansa to go ahead and withdraw from the draft. That's not what I was expecting to happen. And I'm half. They definitely do not want me to interview him. Again, I wonder. But this is the report we're hearing. Ethan Almansa, who, you know why? It's because he was not. This is a weak draft class, and he still couldn't go first round. Even though I would take Ethan Almansa in the back end of the first, this kid might be going to either Spain or Australia. So he started playing for Real Madrid. He went to OTE, went then to G League, and at the World Cup, he actually played really good. And now he believes that if he plays for another team, he can establish himself as a first-round pick in next year's draft. He got feedback that he needs to improve his offensive skill and his shooting ability to reach that potential. All right. Now, what do I think? What do I think with Ethan Almansa going overseas? I think it's smart if you truly believe that he can be a first-round pick. At best case scenario, the guy's Al Horford. There's no problem with that. That's fine. And I think when you look at Ethan Almansa, he's a nice kid. He's a good kid. He's got a good head on his shoulders. But the problem there is he might just be it's just hard. Like, he might just be close to a finished product. And I like the kid. I like the kid. I wrote nice stuff about him. I interviewed him. I just it I just don't know how he gets better after struggling. Not struggling, but not becoming what we thought he is. He's got great frame. He's like 6'8", 6'9", and he shot 55% from the field. And he finished the season well. He's got good vision. He can run the pick and roll. He's switchable as a defender. His problem is he's not a lob threat. He's not really, in terms of athleticism, great. He's kind of inconsistent from outside. He struggled to go against bigger post-up players, and he's not quick enough to go against players on the perimeter, and he falls short of being an offensive focal point, and he's still developing. So one of the notes we had was there's moments where he's been better than most bigs in the G League, but we don't know if he translates to the NBA. He's not a big time shooter or lob threat. He's not playing a lot of the ball with your back to the basket in the NBA these days. And that's sometimes his game. He's got good size and feel. He can pass it, and I think he's a guy that if he can go overseas, develop his jumper, and show he can win and be more productive on a different team, I think that could be the saving grace for him in terms of what his future could be, and maybe not NBA wise, but professionally. I think this season, I think he can make it the NBA. I just think there might be, unless he has an incredible year next year, I think there is going to have to be a learning curve in the G League. Regardless if he's a first round pick, he's going to have to spend some more time in the G. No offense to him. I think he's a fantastic player. Unless he blows me away next year in overseas, either in Australia or if he's playing next year in Spain, because he is Spanish, and I would not be surprised if Real Madrid, or I don't think he would go to Real Madrid. He would go to a bad team. Real Madrid, he would not play on Real Madrid. But it's all, I think he just needs to, it's crazy how bad this draft is. The fact that he could not be guaranteed a first round pick is a bit telling of his skill level. So I just think next year's a very good draft. So he might have to wait 2 years before seriously actually having a chance to go over, to come into the draft and be a first round pick. He's young though. He's young. So if he were to do it, I would not be surprised. He would be the one to be able to do it. Now, Bruce Brown, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go ahead. Ooh, a little bit bad. The Bruce Brown. Now, wait. All right. I guess before we talk about this, do I really think this draft sucks? No. I think the top of the draft is not as good as it's been in years past. I actually think outside of, let's say, the top five picks, 5 through 70 is closer than it ever has been in many drafts. So what do I mean like that? If you go undrafted, or let's say Enrique Freeman might be closer in being having an impact similar to a guy drafted in after the lottery or at the end of the lottery. So there's a chance that guys who are drafted in the second round, who go undrafted, who are drafted at the back end of the first round, that outside of the top 5 picks could have day one impacts, similar day one impacts, better day one impacts, be better pros have. So I think the thing is this is a weaker draft class in terms of top end talent. Like, there is no guaranteed all-star in this draft like there is typically, but there are way more players with higher floors to truly believe that X, Y, and Z are going to be able to have a impact because of their fundamentals. While other draft, there are a lot more outside of like the top 30 dudes, a lot more crapshoot. This draft has less of a crapshoot outside. Like, the crapshoot is really who you believe the 5 best prospects is. While in other drafts, the crapshoot begins, we know who the top 10 prospects are. The crapshoot is who are the remaining 50. In this draft, ironically, it is the other way around, where who are the top 5 prospects, because that is so subjective, and it is whatever you believe are the best traits available, while the rest of the draft, people would agree, is actually deeper and has a higher floor because there are a lot older prospects and a lot more fundamentally sound guys who are more kind of specialists and we know what they are, instead of a lot more amoebas that are just full of potential. And we're like, oh, let's just throw them out, paint on the wall and figure out if they can figure it out or not. While there's a lot more guys that, like you said, a Jalen Tyson, where we know that can make an impact because they're a little older. So I think that's the best way to explain it. Now, I don't know. I like ate lunch and like now I want to brush my teeth. I just don't. I don't feel like I don't have anything, but like I just felt like there was stuff there. But either way, Bruce Brown. What are we hearing? Bruce Brown is expected to test, not really test, but get traded. They're expected to trade him. And for me, I think the crazy thing is when you look at a guy like Bruce Brown, you're surprised that a team like the Toronto Raptors want to trade him. Yes, I understand that. Shout out my coworker at Hoops Hype. Go read my work at Hoops Hype, by the way. But he's expected to be traded because he's $23 million, and he's the type of guy that teams look at like a six man. Now, what teams are going to be going after him? I think teams, LA would probably like him. Either LA team. New York would like him, talking Knicks. I think Dallas would like him. Minnesota would like him. Miami would like him. I think Charlotte would like him. I think Atlanta would like him. Atlanta has money problems, so they probably wouldn't want to pay him. I mean, they would be willing to trade DeAndre Hunter into Bruce Brown, which could be a trade idea in its own right. And we'll do some trades right here in a second, which we can go ahead and do those trades. But I wanted to pull up what Bruce Brown is statistically, what you're getting: a multi-positional defender who's like 6'3", 6'4". It's the tale of two cities. So this past season, collectively between two teams, he averaged about 11 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3 assists, about a steal a night, shot 47.8% from the field, 32% from three on 2.5 attempts a night, got to the free throw line about 2 times a game at 82%, true shooting of 56%. Now, Denver. In Denver, he put up a career high. I guess in Indiana, he's putting up 12 points a night, and he was shooting at 32%. But the real story is that in Denver, he's putting up 11.5 points, primarily off the bench, 4 rebounds, 3.5 assists, but he shot 36% almost on 3 attempts a game. And that's what you're hoping. So we're going to go over here to the trade machine and just hope that we can find a couple trades. Let me just make sure that everything looks groovy on this part. Yes, it looks groovy. All right. So how do we go about figuring out what can be established as true value? So I think when we look at the Raptors, again, we talked about the Hawks are a great example of a team that would be interested in Mr. Bruce Brown. He's an expiring deal, and they have a guy by the name of DeAndre Hunter and a guy by the name of AJ Griffin that they would like to get off. Right here, I think this would be a deal that personally, I think both parties would just kind of be cool with if they just did a straight up swap, because in this case, it would be Atlanta would save money and they would churn DeAndre Hunter into Bruce Brown, and they don't really like AJ Griffin to begin with. But I think they want assets, and they probably would want to trade him to the Western Conference. Now, what's a deal they could do? Well, that deal could be Chris Paul for Bruce Brown. Right there, that's a fantastic deal. And the Warriors, they would probably have to offer – they probably would want to keep that second-round pick, but they would probably have to offer several second-round picks to get him. And I don't think – and look at this, players cannot be aggregated in a trade. So you can do picks because they're in the second apron. So if they were to do this trade and do, let's say, I really think 3 seconds would get this deal done. And does this get them out of the second apron? The deal there, and then I think it would actually help them get them out of the second apron as it would do. But again, I don't think the Warriors give them the best deal. And for them, It would be a Western Conference team. Would the Timberwolves want to see if they can move some salary that they committed to, but there isn't really any salary that they can move that they committed to that is still there that is movable. So for them, and again, they can't aggregate players in a trade. So you go down to the Grizzlies, and you're like, why the Grizzlies? Well, they have Luke Kennard, who's I think somebody that is of interest, maybe. And then I think a guy like Santi Aldama, who I personally love Santi Aldama, but I think he's kind of probably outstayed his welcome. So for me, when you look at a situation like that, I think you look at Santi Aldama and you look maybe because they could lose a guard, maybe they're curious they could ask for like a Zaire Williams or somebody that maybe gives them a bit of value in terms of a reclamation project. I guess Santi Aldama in his own right would be a reclamation project. And I understand right there that finding that would be a bit harder than 1 second. I just got to do this real quick. But I think that's what they're trying to figure out is who can be their reclamation project and give them. Okay, how long was I muted for, ladies and gentlemen? I went mute for a second. It just told me I went mute. But I wanted to say that this deal, one could say, oh, crap, you know what ended up happening? So I went mute for a second. Okay, so I'm back. But what ended up happening was I needed to switch my inputs for what I'm using as like my microphone, and I went mute for a moment, and as a result, I'm back. But what I was saying was, in a deal for Bruce Brown, I would think no picks are going to be involved due to the fact that I don't believe Bruce Brown is a guy on an expiring deal on a somewhat overpaid contract would be giving you a first round pick. So Santi Aldama, Zaire Williams are two reclamation projects that you would get their, I believe, bird rights and their restricted free agency. And then Luke Kennard, if he accepts the team option, would then be like a very, very simple, I would say, kind of temporary 3-point shooting alleviation that you could maybe flip down the road. But yeah, I don't think you're going to have anything too crazy happen in this draft in terms of not draft, but offseason in terms of a Bruce Brown trade. I don't think anything crazy will happen. Now, let me 1 second, guys. Is this going to give me an option for that or no? Ooh. Okay, no, still won't give me that option. So we're just going to continue rolling with my iMac microphone, which is fine. I don't think it sounds too bad. But is it back? I'm trying to figure out if the sound is gone. Let's see. Let's see if the sound is back, ladies. It's telling me the sound is there. We're going to go. You can hear me? You can hear me? Okay. Sorry about that. We are having some sound issues, and it's more so because of what I was doing. But let's see if we can get this sound back with my Rode Podcaster microphone, and it's more so because I had to connect. My wireless microphone died, so I needed to change what we were doing. So we were changing microphones, ladies and gentlemen. All right, back with this microphone. How does that sound? We're back with the good mic, so that should be good. But either way, to wrap up the whole Bruce Brown thing, I just don't think anybody's going to give a trade for a first round pick for him. I just think that's just asking for a lot. Now, what do we have? So let's continue to go through. I guess we have a bit more news. It's crazy to think about just like how much this offseason we've just seen already, just move after move in terms of player movement and the expectation of certain players are going to be. We already know which guys are going to be gone, which typically this early in this early in the offseason is not something that we know. So to me, it is always interesting to see how the roster or how the offseason is going to play out, especially from an outside view in. And this year, is there going to be a lot of movement? Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. Now, a guy that we're hearing who's going to get moved is a big man. One that we followed his career. As you guys know, I'm from Maryland, or my folks live in Maryland. I guess I'm technically from Maryland. I was born in Minnesota, living in Miami now, or north of Miami. I lived in Orlando at one point, and I've lived all over, ladies and gentlemen. So for me, it's definitely interesting to see this guy, Stick Smith, who potentially could be or not potentially, could be a sought after guy. I don't know how sought after he'd be because it is Stick Smith, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, Stick Smith is, the best thing since dried paint, or not dried paint, sliced bread. But let's continue. And Stick Smith is expected to decline his player option. I know some people are going to be like, why? Why are you doing this, Stick Smith? And I think Stick Smith, also Timothy Newman, you said it best. I do agree with this draft, that this draft is more of a fit type, plug and play development, not a superstar upside. That's a great way to look at this draft. But Stick Smith, in a free agency market that I've talked about this offseason, there isn't too many high profile big men. And Stick was a guy that the Phoenix Suns gave up on, and he resurrected his career as a flyer for basically picked up on waivers by the Pacers. And because his option was declined and then he was released, he became a free agent. So the Pacers signed him to a 2-year +1, which was basically a 3-year deal, with the third year being a player option. And he's going ahead and declining that player option. And some people are sitting here and being like, why would Jaylen Smith decline that player option? Is like he worth that? As he was a guy that in the playoffs he did not play, but in the regular season he played through 61 games, put up about 17 minutes a night, 10 points, 5.5 rebounds, shot 59% from the field, 42% from three. And over the last few seasons, especially since going to Indiana, he's a guy that last year in Indiana he played a little bit more minutes, 18 minutes a night, put up 9.5 points again, 6 rebounds, shot 28% from three. But in that first 22 games with Indiana, when he was getting a bunch of minutes, most minutes of his career, he put up 13.5 points, 7.5 rebounds. He shot 37% on 4 attempts a game, 53% from the field on 10 attempts a game, and averaged about a block a game. And at this point, when you look at a guy like Jaylen Smith, what are you getting? You are getting a 3-and-D 4-5. He's more of a 5 who's undersized. Stick Smith is his nickname because he's got sticks for legs. And he's fantastic. He's fun. I think the big problem with a guy like him is understanding that he needs to be on a team that gives him an opportunity to get some minutes. I think he's a guy who's a rhythm player. And when you get him out of his rhythm, I think that really messes with his play style and how he goes about things. So by helping him be a guy who could maybe be like a six man, as I'm starting to lag. I don't know why, but a guy who's kind of a six man and helps you kind of have flow in your offense is something I think would be huge for a team like the Phoenix Suns. I think the Phoenix Suns would love Stick Smith on their team. The Phoenix Suns would look at Stick Smith and be like, oh my God, why don't we have a guy like him? And I think that's because he's suited for a role personally that, in my opinion, is come in, be a six man, put up shots, rebound, come off. Maybe like a Montrezl Harrell, maybe the Philadelphia 76ers. I think somebody's going to give him more money than we're expecting as a result of his finesse and like what he's able to do on multiple levels for a team. So I think he's somebody, part of the reason why, I think opportunity-wise is why he's going to leave the Indiana Pacers. I just don't think there's a reason for him to stay on a team like that, because I think he knows, like we know, he could probably get more minutes going to a team like the Suns, like probably the Philadelphia 76ers, maybe the Oklahoma City Thunder that need a big who can come off the bench and give them some size. Like that's like a legit skill that I think we're underappreciating, because someone like Jaylen Smith is just off the bench for a team that you might not think is that good, which I understand the thinking behind it. But what is your guys' thoughts? Are you guys with me on this one, or am I dumb for having this approach in terms of thinking that he's a guy that, as he has shown, I think he's a rhythm player who needs to kind of be a microwave or a starter. And if that's the case, I think he is someone who should be sought after as a sixth man, maybe not a rotational piece. And that's what I think we're seeing. So for me, I would not be surprised if, like the teams that we've mentioned earlier, he goes out and he ends up being someone that is sought after and gets picked up on a prove-it deal by a team that surprises both of us, that maybe is a bit better because of his play style. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one. Maybe, again, I have a tendency of sometimes being a little overzealous, and I know I get a little too excited. But I think when we just look at how everything's playing out, it just makes sense if this ends up being some sort of, I think, foresight that people are going to get paid, if that makes sense. That it seems like people are going to get paid, so he's going to go out and he knows he can be in a better situation than he is currently in Indiana. I just think he wouldn't be declining that player option, which is like guaranteed safe, like guaranteed paycheck, if he wasn't going to be potentially be put in a better opportunity. Am I wrong for thinking that, or are you guys in agreement with that thinking? I feel like that makes sense in my mind. Have you guys heard this news? Mario Hezonja. He's actually someone that I thought was going to make it in the NBA. I was so sad when Hezonja never made it. Like, I really thought Hezonja was going to be that guy, that he was going to come out and Hezonja was going to have huge impact and rock the world. But some news about Hezonja is he's somebody that could be coming back to the NBA, as he's listed the NBA's as a potential destination. Now, if you guys haven't been following, Mario Hezonja played the last 2 seasons in Real Madrid. I also want to say I'm 95% sure Hezonja was the guy who said when he left the NBA that he would never go back. Right? That's here nor there. So he went to After he went to the Greek league, played for Panathinaikos, and he averaged 12.5 points, shot 38.7%. Then he went to the Russian league, and he put up 18 points a night in 21 games, and then he dipped. And these past 2 years, he's been Real Madrid playing kind of like a role player role, playing 20 minutes a night. He shot between the 2 seasons about 37%, 45% from the field, put up 10 points a night, 4 rebounds, 1.5 points a game. And Mario Hezonja at this point is a swingman. He's freakishly athletic. People forget, and he's a good scorer, and he's physically athletic for the wing position. 6'8", athletic, bouncy, and he's got a really pretty form on that jumper. His feel for the game, though, is not the best, and he sometimes gets lost on defense. And he is good at handle for his size, but he doesn't do too much with it. And he's become a better three-point player, and he's tried to become a better passer for others, but he tries too hard and kind of becomes a bull in a china shop. But I think there is a place for him in the NBA, especially that people like, and he's only 29 years old. So the report that we heard specifically from Mark Stein, the Stein line, and if he's reporting it, that means it has its weight in gold. And it also means that somebody, an agent, came over to Mark Stein, because this is how it works in the NBA, ladies and gentlemen. This is how it works. I mean, I personally will say I wrote 75 scouting reports for hoopshype.com, but I had agents, all right, like former players. Like I've had former NBA players, I'm not going to say who are now agents, who I used to watch on TV, hit up my phone because they got my number through a colleague, and they told me, hey, are you going to write a scouting report on X, Y, and Z? And then I would write in a scouting report, and they would ask me, hey, can I see it before? And then I've also had agents call and tell me to change stuff, but and then we argue, not argue, because it's always very, what's the word? It's very cordial. But I explain my logic behind why what I wrote, and then if they convince me or I convince them, we meet in a mutual middle ground. And I usually, because I want to keep in good faith with everybody, I usually find a middle ground that I'll tweak it to be for the best of both worlds. But if Mark Stein's weighing this means somebody's feeding it to him, and that means there is NBA interest for Mario Hezonja. And Mark Stein wrote the former 5th overall pick. There's a reason why the guy went 5th overall, who spent the past 2 seasons with Real Madrid, is a free agent to watch. And I agree. I think when you look at the situation, is that FC Barcelona sources have assured there's no real agreement of any kind with Mario Hezonja, who's currently at Real Madrid. However, according to Mundo Deportivo, the Croatian winger has already signed a document proposed by the Bulgarana club, and Marca has dropped the market bomb, perhaps putting an end to one of the most followed negotiations of the year that Mario Hezonja has agreed with Barcelona. And even reports of the contract already signed by the Croatian player, Hezonja would have rejected the renewal offers proposed by Real Madrid for economic reasons. He would have wanted to have greater weight in the team, aka more say, aka more touches, and thus receive a higher salary. For its part, Barcelona would have offered the Croatian a contract worth $3 million per season, making him one of the highest paid players in Europe. All right, which means he would have been a starter. But guess what? In the NBA, we'll give you $3 million to ride the bench, Mario. You want to ride the bench? Come here. There's a spot on left bench for your ass. I have no problem with Mario Hezonja. Seriously, no problem. But he did leave us out to freaking hang and dry. I do actually have a problem with how that all ended. But in a way, that wasn't necessarily his fault. But at the same time, I do want to say Mario Hezonja did kind of screw my magic. That we also wasted a pick on him. He shouldn't have gone that high. It still pisses me off. I still think about the times that we all the picks we've wasted. We've wasted so many picks, ladies and gentlemen. As a Magic fan, I've seen so many picks wasted. That's always probably like the worst thing, is seeing picks wasted. But we got more topics to top, more people to see. And obviously, we got to talk about the guy that everybody loves so much, and that is the man by the name of someone who has the same name as his father, technically. I would never name my family doesn't allow it, because none of the names in my family's history has ever repeated. So we're not allowed to repeat names. That's just like a family thing. So I will never have to worry about that. But I would never give my son my same name. I just feel like that's just weird. And I feel like it's egotistical. Am I wrong? And then someone's going to be like, well, I'm a junior. Either way, Bronny James, Bronny James to Dallas. Mark Stein of the Stein Line is reporting that the Dallas Mavericks are interested in drafting Bronny James. I think this, the funny thing is they're like, oh, the funny thing about Mark Stein reporting that Bronny James is tied to Mr. I don't know why I'm blanking on this. The Dallas is they're like they would like to draft him if he's available at 58, but he's unexpected. So Bronny James, from what I've heard, from what everyone from Eric Pincus has reported this, who I'm friends with Eric Pincus. I would say Eric Pincus is like a mentor to me, and I have seen that the Lakers will draft Bronny James, pick 55. That is if you want to start putting money on that, I would go out and place money that at pick 55, Bronny James will be drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers. I would be shocked. And some people say he's Austin Rivers. I say best case scenario, he's Avery Bradley. I've seen Bronny James in person. I was at the combine. I'm 6'1" with a 6'4" wingspan. Bronny James and I stood by each other. We were the same height. I could argue that I might be a little taller than Bronny James. In shoes, I might be 6'2". But the Mavs, if he were to not go at 55, would take Bronny James. And I personally, I've tried to figure out how much validity there is to LeBron and Dallas and all that stuff that happened last year. If you guys remember, we talked about LeBron, Draymond Green, and all that. And I now having people that know people within both buildings, I have poked and prodded and asked, hey, was there some validity? And from what I've gotten is it doesn't seem likely. It seems like LeBron James really likes Los Angeles. But we're going to go full circle this and be like, if the Mavs were to take Bronny James, it would be because LeBron James is a free agent and they would be wanting to try to, I'd assume, entice him, incentivize him, persuade him to come to Dallas. But from people I have spoken who know people within Los Angeles and know people within Dallas, they have both told me the rumors last year did not seem to be that much true or have any validity. And again, the NBA is the male soap opera. It is the entertainment league. And it is for the entertainment league for that reasons, because we are sitting here in a 52-minute live stream talking about things like this. But no, it does not seem like Bronny James is going to be a Dallas Mavericks. But again, those tea leaves are to think about that we are reading right now could be some things that if it were to happen would be a bit more foreshadowing to what happened. So what I'm saying is it's more than likely that LeBron James and Bronny James are going to be teamed up with, as Bronny James will be drafted 55th overall by the Los Angeles Lakers in New York City on the second night of the draft, Thursday, I believe it is. I will be there. I will be at the draft, by the way, guys. Shout out, first time ever at the draft. I'm hoping they'll let me to be the second game. I know I'll be there first day. Second day, there's supposedly not all people will be there, but I digress. Either way, I think it'll definitely be interesting to see what's going to happen with Bronny James. I have been following that storyline, and it's one that I have been so interested in because for us, I think it brings up the idea that what's going to happen is still such an unknown. It's such an unknown. And I think there's such a small chance that LeBron James is gone. Like, there's a small chance. From what I understand is they play this whole kind of like herky jerk each other. Like 1 year LeBron's in control, the next year the Lakers try to take back control. It's a weird dynamic that they have as they try to tell Clutch Sports, no, we're in control. And Clutch Sports try to tell them, nah, like we're in control, bro. Like, just face it. And that's like a big problem they have is it's weird. And then Rob Pelinka supposedly really wants like credit for everything. So it's like a very small, or they have the smallest like front office in the entire league. It's a very weird thing that they have going over there in Los Angeles. And I mean, if that's your cup of tea, sure, but it makes it all very, very strange. And I feel sorry for everyone involved because it's the Lakers. They should be way better. But let's talk about Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram, according to Christian Clark of the New Orleans Times, is it Picayune? Picayune? I've always wondered what that's supposed to be. But the report is that, yeah, it's seeming that the Pelicans don't want to extend Brandon Ingram. Injury prone. The guy's never really, besides his rookie year, since his rookie year, he has never played past 65 games, I believe, is the exact amount that I look at the other day. And why would they? So, and also, I've said for a while that before this season, this was Mr. Brandon Ingram's team. Like, this was not Zion Williamson's team until recently. And as a result, I think the biggest thing is that we're seeing is, all right, how are they going to move forward? And for me, I think the way that they're moving forward is understanding that they need to trade Brandon Ingram this offseason for whatever they can get. And for me, I think the biggest thing that they're looking at is how can we turn Brandon Ingram, who he wants an extension, and we don't want to give it. I really think he's going to end up in like either Portland or maybe Philadelphia. I just don't think Philadelphia is going to give him the deal that he wants. I think the deal that the Pelicans wants. I think the Pelicans want players. They want to turn his contract into multiple players because there's a chance they're going to lose multiple players this offseason, which in my opinion is very true. And it's smart for them to go ahead and be realistic that, all right, let's play ball and see what there is out there. But to me, I don't think there is much out there. I think they're trying to find dandelions in a meadow filled with I want to say wheat, but what I'm gonna say is not wheat, but with weeds, and weeds as in like bad shit. So yeah, I think it's definitely a weird situation. So if we were to go around and play the good old game of, oh, let's go ahead and, look at the trade machine and talk about what trades. I think someone over here said, and like, look, Timothy Newman, I know what you're saying about Bronny, but Ronnie Clark, Ingram to Indiana. That was one I was thinking. And I guess when they traded for Pascal Siakam, they did get his bird rights, and the expectation is we'll talk about Pascal actually shortly. But I think Indiana could maybe be feasible. It's just so hard. So should we hop into the trade machine and do a little few trades? Let's just hop into the trade machine and let's look at some trades. I don't think they care for picks. I don't think, because picks are what you want long term, and it's not there isn't many trades, because if you trade for assets, what trade are you going to do with those assets? I think they just want to do a one and done trade. So let's say if Indiana, all right, let's say, can I fix this contract? Modify contract type. What's the max? Isn't the max? Let's give him a 3-year deal. That's what they're going to give him. And I think the max would be what? 40? I think it's like 43 each year. Let's just do that. 43 each year, something like that. That gives them a contract of him on $43 million a year. So what contracts would they use to trade? They don't really have much that they can use, and they're a team that now is technically $10 million over because they just signed Pascal to the max, and this is where it becomes hard because they don't have those salaries, and that I don't think they would want to trade Aaron Nesmith. But if they were willing to trade Aaron Nesmith in this hypothetical world, and I think they very much value Miles Turner, but I think in this hypothetical trade, would they be able to do Jarris Wallace? I think you'd have to include Wallace in there. And then I think Isaiah Jackson would have to be included there. Now, this would be a lot of contracts, but the way the deal would work is it'd primarily be for them to get out of the second apron, and it would be just trying to split that contract. And technically this would work. I don't know how much Indiana would want to do it, but the deal right here. Oh wait, why is Pascal Siakam? Wait, no, Pascal Siakam is okay. So you re-sign Pascal Siakam to the max, which I believe is like $129 million, and I think it is. It's like 43 or 50, whatever. It might be more. However, in this deal, you would send Aaron Nesmith, Benedict Mathurin, Jarris Walker, Isaiah Jackson, and Kendall Brown for Brandon Ingram. This technically would make them have to take on $36 million, and then I think the with the max, they would technically now be taking on $57 million, as Pascal Siakam had a contract renegotiation. So let me look at what the Pascal max is supposed to be. They're saying to do the 5-year $245 million, which they potentially could do. But in this deal, I think you give up so many young players that it's worth it. Now, I think, yeah, if we continue to look at it's something like that, but I'm done with this. You get what I'm saying? I feel like the point got across about how you would do this deal for a guy like Brandon Ingram. And I could see maybe a deal like Detroit sending Bojan Bogdanovic and then some other young guys, maybe an Isaiah Stewart in there. Bojan Bogdanovic, Isaiah Stewart, and you throw in maybe Marcus Sasser. I just don't think, and it goes back to the same thing we said with Bruce Brown, I don't think you're trading picks for Brandon Ingram if you're a team trading for Brandon Ingram. And I think if you're the Pelicans, I think you would be fine giving up the possibility of getting draft picks for Brandon Ingram to get more quality win now players in contrast. Maybe that's just me. I just think looking at it, I rather say, hey, I'm willing to say no draft picks. Give me the assets in terms of young guys, and then not young guys. Give me like rotational role players or young guys who can be effective role players right now, and I'll figure out that down the road, especially with how the salary cap rules are with the CBA to get out of the second apron. Because I basically, in that case, what we just did, we turned Brandon Ingram into 5 players who save us money and all could be potentially, guys who help win us games. And I think that is more important in today's NBA than having multiple dudes or multiple draft picks that we don't know if they're going to actually turn into things, or if you're going to be able to actually turn them into picks that win you games. And I think that's the bigger thing. Now, so let's go ahead and talk about the next one. Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson. And you're like, why are the Utah Jazz wanting to trade those two dudes? And I think the reason is Keontae George, who they said, is our point guard of the future, is not their point guard of the future. Keontae George is not a point guard. I think anybody who watches basketball will tell you that he is not a point guard. There's nothing wrong with it. But if they know what's right for them, they would go ahead and try to find that future point guard. And Keontae George needs to develop. And I think the best way for them to go ahead and try to develop Keontae George would be by going ahead and by playing him at the combo guard position, which is his natural position. And then by finding themselves their pure point guard. Now, by moving Clarkson and Colin Sexton, Colin Sexton's both of those guys are more six-mans and both more guys who need the ball in their hands. So if you truly believe Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George are the two guys you need to build around, then let's get the ball in those guys' hands as much as possible. You have to do that. You have to. Oh my God, Dave Swinger, you're right. You're right, Dave Swinger. I said, great catch on that. Great catch on that. I also said Pistons about Bojan, and that was so stupid of me. Great. I'm gonna have to remember that for later. But going back to the Utah Jazz, so the Utah Jazz right here are a team that I think they're just looking like, hey, we need to move off of these contracts. As I grab more water, but we need to move off of these contracts, and we need to give our young guys minutes. Now, there is no good point guard available in free agency. I think that is evident. I think everybody knows that. And I think contending teams will want Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson. So, or rebuilding team or a team maybe like the Wizards will want. The Wizards don't really want Colin Sexton because they have Jordan Poole. So 18 and 14 is what 18 for Colin Sexton, 14 for Clarkson. If I were the Utah Jazz, I would call up the Lakers and I would be like, Jordan Clarkson for Maxwell Lewis and Gabe Vincent. You get yourself a backup point guard there. Then I would turn around for a guy like Colin Sexton. We need a wing. And the wings that are going to be available for like $15 to $18 million aren't anything. You first off could say, here is Colin Sexton. Give me DeAndre Hunter and a couple second-round picks from the Hawks. And then the Hawks have a backup point guard, but I don't think they want to be paying three guards like $18+ million. So it's nice in theory. But I think a team that you could either find is, I don't think the Charlotte Hornets would do it for Davis Bertans, and plus I think Davis Bertans' contract is a little bit tweaked. But maybe you could say, how does Dennis Schroeder and Daron Sharp, I know you don't need another big, but that could work from the Nets if you were trying to do something like that. Or you could call up the Orlando Magic and be like, how does Caleb Houston and Cole Anthony sound for Colin Sexton, which then allows you to give them a guard in return who's probably better than Cole Anthony, and you also get yourself a young player. And I just really think that you could find moves where you're able to send him off. Another one is you call up the Spurs and you say, Julian Champagnie, I believe it is, Charles Bassey and Devontae Graham for Colin Sexton. Devontae Graham is waived, and you only have to give him his guaranteed. He has a $12.8 million or $12.6 million guaranteed contract, or $12.6 million contract. Only 2.8 is guaranteed, so you could just cut him. So I think those are two deals that, just looking at it, you would be able to just easily move on from that money pretty easy. And I think that's what you're going to do with Colin Sexton, is try to find deals like that where you're able to trade him for a deal that allows you to save money. And I think that's the biggest problem here, is just trying to figure out, how are we going to trade these players? Because first off, I don't think it's the world's best contract that Mr. Colin Sexton's on. I think Clarkson's going to be the easier one to move. I do believe that Sexton might be the one that's going to be a little harder to move, just because of the size that contract is. It's not his fault, but it is a rather big one. And for a player who's a six man, he should have been more on a similar value of Jordan Clarkson, in my opinion. But hindsight is 2020. But yeah, I want to hear your guys' opinion on that one. It's definitely interesting. Now, yeah, I did not mean Bojan Bogdanovic, but the idea still stands the same. Dave, what you're saying, yeah, first off, they barely played. Bojan had to be, both of them were they played them out of pure self-preservation in a way, because they had to. But I'm trying to think of some big contracts that they could send. Joe Harris, I believe, isn't expiring. Correct me. Just to look at it, uh, just to fill this in. So I wanted to say if you were to just do this deal, Evan Fournier, that's who's the contract they traded. So Evan Fournier in this sense, but Evan Fournier's the guarantee isn't the same, but it's still just a weird situation that I think we all just would not. We're all looking at it like from the outside in, like thank God we're not in that position because golly, that that's going to be an interesting contract to trade for the Pelicans if they are going to be able to move off of Mr. Brandon Ingram. So definitely going to be interesting to see how they do it. Well, I want to hear your guys' opinion. Do you think they'll be able to trade it, or you think it's not going to be feasible? But like I said, it's a matter of if there's a will, there's a way. Now, let's go ahead and I think right here, Kyle Anderson, the man by the nickname of Slow-Mo, could be on his way out. And Minnesota's scared that they might lose him. And why is that? Because a team might pay him. Kyle Anderson could get one of those cheap deals where some team gives him a bunch of money just for 1 year and more than what the Timberwolves want to pay. He played less minutes this year for us, 6.5 points, 46% from the field, 23% from three. Even though the year before he did shoot from 41% and he's a career 34%, it just went down this year. 4 rebounds. Just under 4 rebounds, 4 assists. And what you're getting with Slow-Mo is kind of a point forward who can defend multiple positions, who can guard. He's not going to really shoot threes. He's terrific, super crafty with the ball, somehow finds a way to be effective regardless of his slowness. Known for his role, plays it well, able to initiate offense at 6'9", can run the pick and roll, can do be an outside inside guy depending what you need from him. And the Wolves are a second apron team, so they're not going to be able to afford him. And I think the other thing is somebody might pay him. And you're like, well, how much did Kyle Anderson make this season? Well, Anderson made this past year, I believe it was 9.2, and I could see him be making more than that. If Royce O'Neal, okay, the mid-level, I think he can make like 7 or 8, and I think he's just going to be too expensive. I just think someone's going to give him a 1-year deal or a multi-year deal that's going to be richer than what the Timberwolves can give him. Like, let's just count it off. The Rockets, the Heat, the Hornets, the Knicks, the Celtics. I know like some of these teams are like they have different ways they would be able to, the Bulls, the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Mavericks. You could even see the Spurs. There's just so many teams, in my opinion, that would be willing to. I think there's just so many teams that would be willing to pay him more. Like he would just become too expensive for the Timberwolves, in my opinion. And I think that's the biggest problem that they're going to have if they want to retain him is being able to actually afford him. And that's a result of, I think, him just being the perfect, as Pierre saying right here, the 7th or 9th guy on a team where you're like, all right, just come in for 15 minutes tonight, be an initiator. I think his role gets reduced in the playoffs by a lot. I don't think he's as effective in the playoffs, but I think he's a guy that as the season during the regular season, he's a lot more valuable. And for me, I understand that. All right, Mike, let's go ahead and let's try to it's just for me when I look at, I don't think he's also a type of guy to take a discount. I think he's a guy that his career might end sooner rather than later because he isn't the most athletic guy in the world. So I think he's probably incentivized to go get that bread while he still can. And with that being said, why stay somewhere where I think there's plenty of other teams that are willing to go out and, and get him. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. And I mean, I'm more than willing to hear your guys' opinions if you guys agree with me. But I just, yeah, I just think somebody's going to give him more money. Plus, I feel like Timberwolves, they drafted Leonard Miller to replace him. So maybe they are concerned, but I don't think it's like a huge concern. Now, when I was a kid, not really a kid, but I was like 12. But when I was younger, I'm like 24. But I'm not like I am 24. I remember Harrison Barnes on that UNC team, and it was really fun. They were like really fun to watch. But it was definitely interesting to see how that's all played out. Either way, how his career has played out, because we thought he was going to be a lot better than he actually is. Harrison Barnes and Mr. Kevin Huerter himself are both two dudes that are expected to perhaps be made available for trade. I think Kevin Huerter is way better than people give him credit, but injuries and I guess it would be effectiveness and the contract a little rich for him for what he brings you. So as a result, he's one of those guys that seemingly people are cool with, kind of like saying, oh, let's move on. And combining his salary with Harrison Barnes brings it to about $34.6 million that one would be probably willing to trade. And I understand that looking at two guys, like, first off, what are you getting with Harrison Barnes at this point in his career? Harrison Barnes is a guy that when you look at him, I think he's absolutely fantastic. I think he's a guy that's going to come in and give you what you need, which is shooting, some rebounding, but it's a little rich. It's not a cheap contract. Seriously, it's not a cheap contract. It's a contract that for a lot of people, we would just all say like, it's not worth it for a player of his magnitude. It's not worth it in today's NBA, where I don't think his effectiveness is what it used to be. And I think that's where a lot of people would agree that he's somebody I think if they can package Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter for Kyle Kuzma and somebody else on that Wizards roster, I think that combination of players could suit them way more than I'm trying to think of someone that they could ask for, like a Jared Butler, and I don't think they need Jared Butler, but if they ask for Pat Baldwin and Landry Shamet, and here's a good one: Kyle Kuzma and Landry Shamet for Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, and this year's first round pick. Would you guys do that? Or am I asking for too much? I don't think that's too much. Do you guys? I think that's a decent deal. I feel like if we do all that, it's really not too crazy. And plus, if you look at it, this is a team that they just need a fresh kind of coat of paint, because they've kind of put themselves in a position that is similar to the Wizards, and that is just being locked into a team that is either the 6th seed or a play-in team. So let's just go ahead and let's act like we are the Sacramento Kings real quickly, ladies and gentlemen. And the Sacramento Kings were the 9th seed, and let's do the Washington Wizards, because I would not mind if we went ahead and we asked ourselves, hey, let's get a group of men by the name of, I think, this year's pick. Straight up, just send us this year's pick. I think we'd be fine with it. Trade it to the Wizards. Then give us maybe the 2029 pick, top 5 protected, and we will send you, because giving you Landry Shamet, I think, is a decent 3-point shooter. I don't think there's anybody else you would care for on this roster that would like. You don't want Rashawn Holmes back. We know that. Kyle Kuzma, sure. There you go. And I don't want to trade Kyle, but he says Harrison Barnes and Kevin Herter right there. You just got yourself. We just got ourselves 2 picks. What do you guys think of this? Supposedly the Kings get worse, but I personally think Kyle Kuzma better than Harrison Barnes. Kevin Herter and Landry Shamet, basically the same player. And guess what? Landry Shamet is 5.8 or $5.8 million cheaper. And I guess your money monetarily, this does nothing for you money wise. But you get guys. First off, Kyle Kuzma's contract's descending, so it helps you out there. Plus, if you really wanted to, you could probably also try to exchange another contract. I don't think Corey Kispert or Denny Abdia are available, so I just don't think that's going to happen. And I think, yeah, like the Wizards are one option. Another, if they want a microwave, what if you church Kevin Herter, Harrison Barnes for Tyler Hero, and this is where I think I get. And who's winning this trade? I feel like they'd have to give up the 13th pick in this year's draft because I think Tyler Hero is better than whatever. Wow, really? So this deal would. Oh, so we'd the Heat would still have to give up money. The Heat can't just do this deal. I guess we throw in Jovic, and I guess Caleb Martin would have to be thrown in this deal, and I think they love Kevin Love too much to be like, oh, here you go. But for example, what if they just threw in for shits and gigs Orlando Robinson and Thomas Bryant just to make the deal work? And there you go. The 13th pick, Harrison Barnes, Kevin Herter for Tyler Hero, Thomas Bryant, Nikola Jovic, and Orlando Robinson. I'm not saying that's like a realistic trade, but there's legitimately worse trades that people make on the internet. So I'm going to say blow me. That one's not that bad. I think that was better than the first one we did with the Wizards. I think the Wizards one was a little, we were trying to stretch it a little bit more than I think was possible, but it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out, especially with Harrison Barnes. I think Harrison Barnes might hold a bit more value than Mr. Yeah, he holds more value than Kevin Herter. I think Kevin Herter's problem is the contract. No offense to Herter. I love Herter and I will defend Herter, but I think it's the contracts that makes him a bit tougher of a pill to swallow in terms of a trade. So I think that's the bigger issue when you look at a guy like him. Like, how do we make sure that actually is possible? It just is a little bit harder to explain, to say like, oh yeah, Herter's worth 16 million dollars. Like, I'd rather have Luke Kennard in that case. But over here, let's go ahead and talk Pascal Siakam getting the max contract. Pascal, they're talking 5 years, $245 million. That's not how much I was expecting Pascal Siakam to be getting. I personally think they're going to give him the Fred VanVleet deal. And I know some people are going to be like, what does the Fred VanVleet deal mean? I think the Fred VanVleet deal is it's a 3-year deal with the third year being a team option, and it's also being, I believe, completely non-guaranteed, similar to how Chris Paul's contract is currently. And Fred VanVleet signed a $128 million 3-year deal with $83 million and the third year is 42.8 non-guaranteed, which means it's with a team option as well. And I think that's what they're going to do with Pascal Siakam. It just makes the most sense. Why wouldn't you? And I just Pascal Siakam's a fantastic player, but Pascal might be a little older than he actually is, and because of where like his background. And besides that, you have other people who are going to have to pay down the road. I just don't think you need to lock yourself into Pascal. He's phenomenal and he's helped risen the floor of this team, but you shouldn't lock yourself into his contract because he's somebody that, I don't think is going to be huge in terms of having to, to get locked up for 5 years. I think locking him up for 5 years would be a mistake. So that's just my 2 cents on the matter. I don't think locking him up for longer than 3 years would be worth it. I think the 2 years with the third year being an option, if he's still looking good after 3 years or after 2 years, is a better way to measure or gauge his I guess how he ages. And besides that, I think it also helps you understand, okay, like what is the team's floor and ceiling with him? Because I think 1 year doesn't give you enough of an actual timetable of what he can be, but giving you 2 years gives you an idea. And if you feel like a third year is needed, then it gives you the chance of pushing this for a third year, but it also doesn't force you to be like, all right, we have to do this. But it allows you also to get out of it if you feel like you need to get out of it. So that's why I think that's a good deal. But definitely interesting to see what it'll be. But I'm confident. I've known for a while that they were going to extend him. It just feels like people are acting like we were surprised that they were going to extend him. I just feel like it was a given. Why would you trade for him if you weren't going to extend him? Now, his former teammates looking like he's getting extended. Scotty Barnes bounced back from a rough second season. And Scotty Barnes this past year proved that he was the man. Scotty Barnes, Scotty B. All right. In 60 games, least amount of games he's played in his career, he put up in 47.5% from the field, 34 from three, best three-point shooting year, 8.5 rebounds, best rebounding numbers, 6 assists, best assist numbers, best steals number 1.2, 1.5 blocks, best block numbers, 20 points a night, 19.9 to be exact. That doesn't tell the full picture. You want to hear something crazy. You want to hear something super crazy about this guy. One thing crazy about Mr. Scotty Barnes, is the fact that Scotty, all right, and he was a guy who came out and I would like to say he started the season as a player on, playing pretty well, but when he got to December, he averaged 24 points a night, shot 40% from three, 52% from the field, about 10 rebounds a night, 6 assists, 1.5 blocks, 1.5 steals. Like, he was a man on fire, and they need to give him the max. Scotty Barnes is an absolute animal and a guy that they need to invest in long term, and that they are going to continue to build this team around. So what is that max contract probably going to look like? I believe the max contract that will pay him 25% of the salary cap starting in 2025, based on the current salary cap projections, $224 million is what it's going to be looking like. Yes, that is absolutely, roughly over 5 seasons, roughly $45 million per season is what they're going to be giving him. However, if Scotty Barnes qualifies for an All-NBA team next season or wins Defensive Player of the Year, the contract will bump up by 30%, and that would mean a starting salary of $46.5 million, 26, and bring it up to 269.9. For the difference between All-NBA nod and not receiving it is nearly $45 million, or roughly $9 million a year. So that is some pretty crazy digits that we're hearing for the guy by the name of Scotty B. And I mean, kudos to him. I mean, he deserves the money, but the people are getting paid crazy amounts of cheddar. the cheddar that's going around these days is absolutely wild. And I needed. I mean, I made a wrong. I should have tried harder in basketball. I still play basketball every day, and I could have played like D2 or D3, not D2. I'm giving myself too much credit if I say D2, but D3. And dude, okay, like still, you could have a career overseas. Like, oh my god, the regrets, man, the regrets. I definitely, the way that they've done it, it's worth it. And Scotty B, the amount of money he's going to see is astronomical. Good for the kid. The kid deserves it. He's plays fantastic, fun to watch, and they've got a star for a long time out there in Toronto. So shout out to you guys. You guys got a good one. He's going to be there for a while, but it's crazy to think. Now we got ourselves Contavious Caldwell-Pope. We knew that he was going to decline the player option for a while now, but Contavious Caldwell-Pope, ladies and gentlemen, is expected to decline that player option. Yep, decline the player option. He's expected to go ahead and I think what get that JJ Redick money. Supposedly he's going to get a deal similar to the 2-year $45 million Bruce Brown saw. So good for him on that part. That's the type of deals that we're seeing every good player that was on a contending team get the following season, just because like players who are on teams that have had repeated success are going to be sought after, are going to be paid. And especially like him, he's won his championship. He's going to go to a team. If I bet you Mr. Contavious Caldwell-Pope is the backup option for a team like Orlando, if they miss out on Klay Thompson and Paul George, I could see a team like the Sixers or a team like the Spurs, who, if they want to contend right away, they need to bring in vets, and a team like Utah, all wanting to go out and get a guy like Contavious Caldwell-Pope because he's going to come in 3-and-D, give you 10 points on like 40+% from three, just guaranteed efficient, and just do what you need. And why not? Why not go out and get the guy who's going to be able to do that for you? I think that he's going to be someone who's just able to help make an impact since the beginning, like you need, and also help you have positive offense. I mean, on my Wizards, he was averaging 13.5 points a night. So the kid can ball. I mean, he's a grown man, but the man can ball. So I don't think there's any doubt that he wouldn't be able to have an impact regardless of the team, good or bad, that he goes to. So just look at that. I think that's just one to keep an eye out for, and one that could have success, especially if he ends up on a team like the Magic where they end up going on a run, and it's because they have a guy like Contavious Caldwell-Pope there catching passes and hitting threes in key moments for them. I think that's just something that people need to understand is very, very possible. So I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts on that one. Contavious Caldwell-Pope, good fit. Ooh, wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andre Drummond expected to leave Chicago this summer. While it remains to be seen, we're hearing, I think this is Cowley saying that DeMar DeRozan's staying, but it seems like Andre Drummond's on his way out. They might be trying to find the heir apparent to Vooch, which we're thank God. If they're finally trying to find the replacement for Vooch, about time, because it felt like forever that they've not wanted to figure out who's going to be the Vooch replacement. But Drummond going to a player, or Drummond as a player, is a guy that the best way for me to explain how I think he would impact a team, I think he needs to go to a team like the Spurs or the Thunder, where you have a guy like Victor Wembanyama and Chet, where they're kind of thinner guys and they can play the 4 or the 5, but next to a 4 they can be the rebounder. Same thing going to a team like the Orlando Magic next to Paulo Banchero. I think being a backup for the Knicks would be huge. I think going to the Celtics would be huge. The Clippers would like a guy like him. So to see that he's somebody that could be sought after, I'm not surprised. Okay, I'm not surprised by it whatsoever. He's got good skills, and he's somebody that I'm not surprised that even though he's been on these minimum contracts, he continues to be someone that teams are going after, because rebounding, especially as we're seeing, is so key. I could see the Dallas Mavericks or teams that are wanting to copy the Dallas Mavericks, a team like the Houston Rockets, or even a team like the Timberwolves, if they want to back up big, just going out and trying to get a guy like him because of what he's able to contribute rebounding wise. I mean, the guy at one point, I felt like the season was averaging like a double off the bench. Like, who does that, man? As a big like he is. So it's just fantastic to see what he's been able to do and how he's been able to impact games still at his age, and with a game with a skill set that people have said is somewhat maybe like not antiquated, but a little bit nostalgic, a little bit throwback. So I think it's huge to know that Drummond is still finding ways to be effectful, and I think we're seeing a reason for that, because another team is, if maybe Jared Allen's moved, the Cavs could have interest in bringing him back. That's one I think it would be huge. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that. What do you guys expect and why? I definitely think it's a interesting turn of events, definitely, as we just watch all of this. I think he's a guy to keep an eye out for, Drummond to watch. But yeah, that's all I have on Drummond. Drummond, fun guy. Now let's get to the next one. Yes, Jared Allen. I love Jared Allen. He's on a great contract. How can he not like Jared Allen? And there is a report that maybe a team by the name of Sal Cali. I'm an Orlando Magic fan. I'm a Timberwolves, Orlando Magic, Wizards fan. I was born in Minnesota, first person in my family ever born in America. My little younger sister was born in America. We're the only two ones. My mom, dad, and my two sisters are the only people who live in America. The rest live in Europe and Argentina. But I was first jersey KG till I was 5. All right. Lived in Minnesota, then 5 to 9 Orlando. Then first game I ever went to was Magic game, and first couple games were Magic game. First game I ever went to was Magic versus Wizards. Then I moved to Baltimore, and the first year I was there was the draft lottery, and we got John Wall, so I became a Wizards fan. So I grew up as a masochist, a Wizards, Magic, Timberwolves fan. Either way, Pelicans interested in Jared Allen. Feels like this has been reported for like eons now, and that we've known that they've all been, I guess we wanted to say, interested in Jared Allen for a while, as he's just what they've wanted. From what the way that they've described it is, he's exactly what they wanted. So Christian Clark, New Orleans Times, has said that, and obviously the deal would be around Brandon Ingram. I personally think the dream scenario would be Darius Garland and Jared Allen for Brandon Ingram, packaged with, I think they can literally do the deal Brandon Ingram packaged with, I think they would have to do the salary filler. Is it Larry Nance? I don't know if it's Larry Nance or if it would be somebody else, but crazy enough, this would blow your mind. They can actually do the deal, and you're like, how would they be able to do the deal without trading one of their big names? So they can do Jared Allen and Darius Garland for Brandon Ingram, but they would have to trade half the roster. And when I mean half the roster, I literally mean Brandon Ingram packaged with Trey Murphy, Jordan Hawkins, Matt Ryan, EJ Little, and I think you would have to throw in Dyson Daniels in there, and you would be able to trade Brandon Ingram for we'll do at the end of the video for Jared Allen. And the one player, and they want to rebuild the roster around Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, and Trey Murphy. And one of the players that they're interested in is Jared Allen, and they've had an interest in him for a while. They've been to do a deal that works around him, and the Pelicans are interested in adding a center who can provide more rim protection, as Jonas Valanciunas is expected to walk in free agency. Now, I think, it's interesting as I look at this. What could you even get Jared Allen? And they're Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen complement each other really well. And yeah, the Cavs got hit with the injury bug, but I think Jared Allen's fantastic. I just don't know if there's a deal out there, and we'll go to our handy dandy fan spool trade machine, but I don't think there's a trade out there that straight up makes it an easy road for us to get. Oh, sorry. I thought we got. Okay. And like you said, it was Garland first with the Pelicans, but I don't see an easy road for the Pelicans to get Mr. Jared Allen for Brandon Ingram. And the whole thing is like Mr. Karam said, they first was interested in Garland, the Pelicans, as they want a true point guard. And I don't know if there is an easy deal. I think a lot of the times people don't realize there isn't an easy deal here. So if you were to trade, as I said earlier, I think the deal would be they don't want to trade Murphy, so it'd have to be Jordan Hawkins, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, EJ Liddell, and who else? They wouldn't trade Jose Alvarado, so I'm pretty sure Matt Ryan is on a deal. I believe it is. He's currently on a normal deal. So I want to see if this deal would just straight up go through if you were to do the Jared Allen, Donovan Mitchell. Plus, picks wise, you would assume that they would give them this year's first, and then they would give them Milwaukee's, and they would give them their own first in next year's draft, let's just say. Because you'd assume this would have to be a multi-pick. I still don't think this works, but it says it does. So if you were to trade Brandon Ingram, Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, EJ Liddell, Pelicans could get Darius Garland and Jared Allen, and they could still keep Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan did sign a 1-year extension. So that is how the deal is. But again, if they were to do a deal for just Brandon Ingram, then it would be Jared Allen, and you would assume that they'd be asking for like Dean Wade and maybe George Niang. Probably Dean Wade, and by the way, I'm going to do in this deal, we got to take out Darius Garland. I think they would only give up 2 picks this year's and next year's. Dyson and Jordan would be out, but I think in this deal you would churn. You want Ty Jerome, maybe Sam Merrill thrown in there. This is the only other deal if we were trying to do the Pelicans. Yeah, so the Pelicans save $8 million and they get themselves out of the second apron. And right there, they churn Brandon Ingram, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, EJ Liddell into Dean Wade, Jared Allen, Sam Merrill, and Ty Jerome. I still don't think that's like the greatest deal in the world, but it is what it is. And if you really want to keep Jared Allen, I guess that's what you would do. And you're like, why would you keep Jared Allen? So, look, Jared Allen has been mentioned in trade rumors this summer, and he's a guy that it seems like they would like to keep I would want to keep him. I think it seems to work. The team looks good with Jared Allen. I mean, he was like a depoy candidate this past season. So for me, if I were the Cavs, I would not trade Mr. Jared Allen. because why would we? Why would we? There's no point. I don't see it. I don't see us getting any better. Now, I think the biggest thing is when we sit here, Jared Allen is probably someone that Donovan Mitchell really likes, and the Cavaliers are expected to offer, and Mitchell's expected to sign a 4-year max extension as soon as the offseason allows them. And part of that extension is to tweak the roster and to fit Donovan Mitchell. Mark Stein of the Stein Reports. And I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, what could go wrong?" By following the wishes of a star player, and that this is creating drama. But I think if NBA stars are giving their thoughts on the roster with the GM, that it's good because they're helping build the roster the way that they want. Because if you look, the team is an excellent pairing, in my opinion. They complement each other really well. And the Cavs got hit with the injury bug really bad last year. But when they were all healthy together, this team was fantastic. And the only concern with Jared Allen going forward is the injuries. But unless they can get an amazing return for him, I see no reason to trade him. And all the top 20 players get their inputs on teams. So my question is, if Donovan Mitchell wants Jared Allen to stay and Mobley needs to play the center position, do you have a talk with Donovan Mitchell and tell him that they want to keep Mobley because he's the true center, but he's limited because Allen is still there, and then you see if that's allowed? I don't know, but I think you need to just understand how the evaluation of teams' rosters and how they find players to complement one another is different depending on what each team is looking for. So, I mean, it's definitely an interesting cup of tea, and I think it's dependent on a lot of factors. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, is this something that you're expecting to be a storyline to follow? I think they keep it together, and I just don't see someone being able to give them a good enough return for them to be willing to trade Donovan Mitchell. I mean, not Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, who Donovan Mitchell wants to stay. So for me, it's just makes the most sense for them to go ahead and keep it the way that they want, because the players that they have just don't. I just don't think they're in the position to be picky, if that makes sense. I don't think they're in that position. And yeah, I think it's definitely a interesting way for everything to have developed. But I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. That's basically my thoughts on that one. I think you just keep him. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, an hour and 47 minutes. We're going to dip. Denny Avdia to the Bucks? Nah. And what's a secret team to blow it up this offseason? I don't think anyone's to blow it up. It's too wide open, the NBA. Just with how everything's set up, nobody's going to blow it up. But yeah, that's it. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did, hit that like and subscribe button. It would mean the world. I am going to head out. I think that's basically everything I had. If I had anything else that I might have missed, let me know. I'm always curious to hear other people's thoughts. But yeah, that's it. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Till next time, guys. Peace out. Love y'all. Ciao.